So good morning to all of you. Today we will start session two of slot one and keyboard. So so we'll start session two. These will be our goals for the session. It will be we'll be covering most of these today, and we will try to continue with them on with the next session as well. In the end, I'll be providing some practice exercises what you should be doing to actually help improve your playing. So the first thing is the recap. So we'll first do a small recap about last class, what we did in session one. So basically what we did was we started off with how to play the piano. So like the white keys we did. So we talked about posture, we talked about how to sit properly, we talked about hand movements. So we also talked about how to actually how to play continuously. So we started off with middle C. We looked at the keys, we talked about the keys, and we started off with middle C, which is right here. So we talked about how you're supposed to be playing this. Supposed to be going C, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, C, and then all the way up and then all the way back down. So this is what we did last class as a recap. And in the end, we also did something about the black keys as well, if you remember. So what we did was we talked about how we name these black keys. So we have different names for each of these black keys. So how exactly do we name them? We talked about there being two naming systems, the sharps and the flats. If I can write them again on again here, we have the sharps and the flats. So sharps are denoted by a hash sign and flats are denoted by a small b sign. So we talked about how we name these black keys. So using the sharps method, we take a note that is right below the black key. For example, if I want to pick a random black key, let's say this one right here, then I have to pick a note right below it. That's A, that's right below this one. And so this note will be the sharp of A, so A sharp. So this black key will be called A sharp. And if I were to write this note in terms of flat, I would have to say B flat. And if I pick some other random black key, let's say this one right here, would be D sharp or E flat. So flat is when you go down and sharp is when you go up. So if I say C sharp, then you should be able to point out this one since it's right above C, or even this one, it's right above C. If I say B flat, it should be this one, it's right below B. So that was a naming system that we talked about for sharps and flats. And now the first objective of today is to understand this term, which is an enharmonic equivalent. It sounds big, but it's just exactly what we talked about. We talked about each black key having different names. We talked about this black key can be F sharp. It can also be G flat. This black key can be G sharp or A flat. This can be C sharp or D flat. So because each black key has different names, these are called enharmonic equivalents. And how exactly do you understand these? Well, let's say I take F sharp. The enharmonic equivalent of F sharp will be G flat. So enharmonic equivalent basically means the alternative. For example, if I take A sharp, the enharmonic equivalent of A sharp will be B flat. It's basically the other name for the key. If I ask you what is the enharmonic equivalent of E flat, then your answer should be D sharp because this is E flat, and the other name for E flat is D sharp. So the enharmonic equivalent of E flat will be D sharp. Similarly, the enharmonic equivalent of let's say B flat, the enharmonic equivalent of B flat will be A sharp. So this is the first topic that we've just covered, which is quite simple. It's just a word which represents how you name black keys. So you have two naming systems: the sharps and the flats. The sharps we have like it's just above, so G sharp, and the flat is right below, so A flat. So these different names are called enharmonic equivalents of each other. So they're equivalent to each other because they are the same note, so they are equivalent. And enharmonic is just a fancy word for another name. So A sharp's enharmonic equivalent will be B flat, just another name. So this we just covered simply. It's quite simple, just the name is hard to remember. Um, it's not much to understand here. It's just this. It's different ways of naming these black keys. And the next objective, which we will move on to, will be playing these black keys. So if I come back to the piano here, these black keys, as you can see here, you have if I take middle C, which is right here, and if I take the next C, treble C, which we learned last class, it's an octave higher, which is 8 notes higher than middle C. So it's right here. Between an octave, let's say middle C and treble C, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I have 5 black keys in an octave. So between middle C and treble C, I have 5 black keys. And let's just name them. I can call this one C sharp. I can call this one D sharp, this one F sharp, this one G sharp, and this one A sharp. So now that we've named these black keys, which we just did even on the board before that, let's learn how to play them. Well, usually for the white keys, we keep our posture like this with our thumb, and we sort of go around. We learned how to do it last class. And we learned we can just continue on, and we have to turn our wrist if we have to include more notes, right? So that's what we learned. Now for black keys, it's slightly different because you don't start on your index finger here. You should also not start on your pinky finger here, because if you have a keyboard or piano at home, you can try starting with an index with your thumb finger and your pinky finger, and you'll immediately learn that it's very uncomfortable to actually play like this, because the black keys are high up and there's a bit more space between the black keys. And between the white keys you have nothing, but in between the black keys you have like a bunch of space, and because of that you cannot exactly turn and do all of that, and the black keys are much thinner as well, so it's hard to exactly use your thumb to play all of these and turn. So usually for black keys we do not have a specific way to play them. In fact, depending on the piece, you have to play black keys in a certain manner. Let's say I have to play from C sharp to the next C sharp, which is an octave, because from C to C, it's 8 notes, which is an octave. So from C sharp to C sharp, it's also 8 notes, which is an octave. So to play the black keys, we first, let's say we have some random piece, and in that piece, it will be specified how to play these keys because the finger numbers for these keys will be given. Usually, we do not want to take the thumb to start off the black keys. The pinky finger is also very bad for the black keys as well. We do not use them. Thumb and pinky, we do not use at all. That's the most important thing to remember if you're playing. If you have black keys in your piece. Unlike for white keys, which we just played, there is no specific way to play black keys. It's as simple as that. But if I were to show you with the black keys, for example, I could show you, I usually start with my index finger. Most people start with their index fingers, and you can sort of go like, it's a very simple way to play. You start with the index, you use the thumb for the white keys, but you used your index and your middle finger mainly only for the black keys. So it's important to understand that there is no specific way to play the black keys. And as we encounter more and more pieces, we will find new ways of playing them depending on how the other keys are. For example, if you have to really reach a black key that's far away, you can use your pinky finger, but if it's close enough, you can use your middle finger. And it's as simple as that. There is no one way to play. But as we learn more pieces in this course, you will understand how to play them and how to really understand them while playing. So that's basically playing the black keys, which we haven't exactly done. Instead, we've actually understood that there is no specific way to play them. It depends on the piece. So now we looked at the black keys as well. Let's take this off and we will move on to techniques. So these techniques are, they basically refer to techniques of play. So how exactly do you play, let's say a given piece? I mean, there are so many techniques of play. It's not just one technique. Since it's a piano, there are many techniques of playing, and you can use all of these techniques depending on the piece. You can use some of them, you can use all of them. Sometimes the piece will require you to use some of these techniques, and because of that, you can use those set techniques. So if I come back to the piano here, let me show you some techniques. You can practice them as well. So the first technique which I will show you is called, let me just write on the board as well. The first technique is, let me just put L, E, G. The first technique is called legato. So legato means connected. This technique refers to a connected sequence of notes. So we connect these notes, legato, we connect the notes that we are playing. We don't make a break in between them. They're very connected, very smooth. So how do you play this? Let me show you an example so it's better to understand. The scale that we just played from the white keys on C, if we were to play legato, we would just connect them. So that would be, you notice that the keys are connected. There's no break, there's no break in between. Instead, they're connected smoothly. Each note is after the other. There's no overlapping of notes. They're connected smoothly and you play them smoothly together. You play them together. So that's legato. That's the first technique that we'll talk about. And I've just showed you. Just play it a few times. For example, let's start on C again. Legato would be, let's play again. If you want to play more octaves, you can go ahead, but connect them, make them smooth. So that's simple legato. So you connect them, you make them smooth, and you just make them together. You don't break them. There's no breaks in between, which you have to play. That's the first technique which we'll talk about. And now the second technique is the opposite of that, which is called staccato. So staccato refers to the opposite of legato. So if legato meant continuous notes, staccato means broken, means there's a break in between. Each note must be played for a very short duration of time. For example, if I were to play the same 5-note sequence from C, in legato, it would be like this. But in staccato, it would be. So there's a difference. You see that in legato, it's connected. But in staccato, I just touch the notes slowly, individually. So that's the difference. And depending on the piece, and depending on how the piece goes and how it sounds, you can use either of these techniques. Sometimes the piece will tell you to use a certain technique and you'll have to use them. So let's say the first exercise that we'll have to talk about right now is playing a full scale in legato. So let's say C major, right? So C, let's start on C and let's play one octave in legato. It would be the same octave in staccato would be. So that is the same thing for legato and staccato. We start off. So we start off with C. For legato, we connect them, we don't make any breaks. For staccato, we make the breaks. Very short notes. So you see that I'm just touching the notes. I'm not really putting too much pressure on them. I'm just touching them, like very slight touches. And that's important because if you put too much pressure, it'll almost be connected and you won't hear a good staccato. So you should make sure that for a good staccato, you just touch. So now let's see how it is done in one hand. On the left hand for legato, it's connected. It's not broken. This is legato. For staccato, I break them individually. So it would be, I'm just touching the notes. I'm just jumping. You can see my hand moving as well. It's not really on the keyboard. It's not connected. And for my right hand, if I were to do legato, would be, it's connected. My hand's not jumping around. It's just in one spot and it's moving up and down. If I were to do staccato, on the other hand, it would be, so that would be staccato. And so it's important to understand that you have to play these both separately on both hands first. So you play your right hand first, then you play your left hand next, or you play your left hand first and you play your right hand next. And then you play both of them together. Now let's play one, let's do this one more time. On both hands, legato. Staccato. One more time. Staccato. So this was the basics that we just covered, which are techniques for legato and staccato. So we've covered two techniques right now. And these two techniques are the most important for when you're starting out the piano. Usually these are the ones that are taught to beginners first before we move on to other techniques, which will actually involve reading the notes. So when we move on to more harder techniques, you'll actually have to read them. It won't be written like this. You'll actually have to read each individual technique that will be present on a score, on like a note sheet, which I will bring next class as well. We'll start that off, and then we will move on to the songs and how we can actually play them. So now that we've covered these two basic techniques, you can practice these as well, the exercises that I've given. You can practice them as much as you want. You can get better at them. It's always good to practice them as much as you can. That really help you when you do more of this, when you do more advanced pieces as well, if you're pursuing piano. Now, these techniques, we'll come back to all of these again by the end of the class so that you don't forget them, so that you don't find any difficulty in them, so that you're fine with them. We will move on to chords. So for chords, now, let me just release this. This as well. When we talk about chords, now this is a very, okay, so this is the starting of the difficult part, chords. And this will probably need some attention to actually understand, because in order to talk about chords, we will have to talk about scales. So let me just write them down. Let me just write it down. Scales. So we start off. So scales, you have a lot of scales in piano. So what exactly is a scale? Well, what exactly is a scale? If you think about it, let me show you exactly what it is on the piano. We just started off on middle C, if you remember. And remember that in the first class, in the previous class, we just played. We went all the way from middle C to treble C, then we came back and we played this sequence of notes. And it sounds proper. It sounds like it's like an increasing and like a decreasing. It sounds like it's logical. And that's because it's a scale. This is what you call a scale in piano. This sequence of notes that form a part of this is called a scale. So let's say if someone were to ask you to play a C scale, you would play this because it starts on a C and then it goes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Then it comes all the way back down. So this is what you call a scale. It consists of notes, and all of these notes, they form part of an individual scale. So we didn't even know what a scale was, and we just played it in the first class. So that's the introduction there. If I were to tell you to play a scale on C, starting from C, you would start C and play this exact same thing. Now this question might come into your mind: is there how many scales are there? What are the different types of scales? Like how many are there on a piano? Are there like an infinite number? Well, no, there's not an infinite number. You have a finite number of scales because obviously you have only C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. You don't even have that many notes. You only have 8 notes, and then the sharps here. So that's all the notes. So you only have a finite number of scales, but there are quite a lot of scales. Even though it's a finite number, you have a lot of scales. We'll start off with simple scales. We just started off with C, which was this with both hands. C, that's the C scale. Now, if I go into a bit more detail, which is required, is for this course, I will talk about two things. Let me just show you the board. Scales we have, which are divided into two categories. We have major scales and we have minor scales. So two divisions are made. Two divisions, major scales and minor scales. You have these two types of scales. And I will talk about them right now. What are they? What is the difference in between them? Because you need to understand both of these to understand what chords are. And you need chords before you play songs or pieces, because all of them will involve chords and you'll have to know what that chord is. So let me come back to the piano. We talked about major scales and minor scales. Now, major scales are those scales that sound bright, they sound warm, they sound like positive scales. If I were to start on C and I were to play a C major scale, it would be same thing. So a C major scale is exactly what we played in the first class, which we have been practicing all this time. It's from C up an octave, back down. The same, it contains all white notes, all C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then the same way back down. Minor scales, which we won't be touching right now, are those scales which sound a bit more dark, which sound a bit more negative. They sound a bit more like less warm. So we won't be talking about minor scales in this class. We'll be talking about them in upcoming sessions. But to give you an example of how they sound, let me play, let's say, a C minor scale. That's a C minor scale. It sounds a bit more weird. Sounds like it's a bit more dark, like less positive, less warm. So let's compare them. A major scale from C, a C major scale would sound. And a C minor scale would sound. So you can really hear the difference. And not only that, I also included a few black notes as well. This, which D sharp, this, which is G sharp, and this, which is A sharp. So these three black notes were also included in my C scale. So depending on the scale, you have different types of notes. So today we'll only be covering two scales, two major scales, not minor scales. Minor scales are a bit more complicated and they will involve a bit more thought, bit more attention, which we'll be covering in the later classes after we get some songs in. Then we'll be covering minor scales. We'll first play a few songs. So today we'll be covering two scales, major scales. So the first one is C major, which we've just played. From C, which we already know. And the next scale is from G. So if you know G, G is C, D, E, F, G. G major scale starts on a G because every scale, G major, A minor, the first note, that scale will start on that first note itself. So a G major scale, which we'll be covering today, will start on a G. This is middle G. It's like 5 notes above middle C. C, D, E, F, G. Then you have one octave down, you have the same G. So the scale will start here. And this scale includes one black note, just one black note. Let me show you the major scale of G. Let me just show you the right hand first, be easier. G, A, B, C, D, E, and the next note is a sharp note. It is F sharp. So this F here, it's F sharp. So F sharp, and then you come back down to the G. F sharp, E, D, C, B, A, G. So this is your G major scale. It has only one black note, that is F sharp. So you'll have to remember which black notes are there. Which notes are there, basically, you have to remember in every scale. C major, which we just played, no black notes, all white notes starting on C. C to C, all white notes. G major scale, which we've learned just now, starts on a G and includes an F sharp, an F sharp. The seventh note, right? G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Then we come back down. That's the G major scale. Now, if I were to play with the left hand, let me start right here. It would be, let me start on a G, and then remember that there's an F sharp. So let's go. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. We come back down. And now the finger movements. How exactly do you move the fingers? Well, it's the exact same pattern that we observed in the first scale in C major. If you remember, I'm sure you do, it is when you go up with the right hand, you have to turn your hand and you have to get to the next note. Similarly, with the left hand, when you move up, you don't have to turn your hand at first. You can just include all 5 fingers. After the thumb, though, you have to turn and you have to get to the next note, the A, with your middle finger. You come back down. After the third finger, your middle finger is supposed to turn, get to the next note, the G, with the thumb. Similarly, here you come back down. When you come back down, you can use all 5 fingers, but then after the thumb, you turn to the E and then you go. So this turning procedure, this turning, we just showed you how the turning works there. Supposed to turn the hand and turn the fingers to get to the next note. The G major scale has the exact same pattern of turnings. So you start off, let's say the right hand, you start off G, you turn, you're supposed to turn because it's the third finger right now. And I cannot include all 5 fingers because then I will run out of fingers. So I have to turn to get to the C. And then I include all 5 fingers. Remember, the F sharp is also there. It's not an F, it's an F sharp. So G, A, B, turn, F sharp, come back down. When you come back down, it's the exact same pattern as we learned in C major. All 5 fingers, include all 5 fingers. After the thumb, you turn over with your middle finger. So one more time. Turn. F sharp, turn. So that's the basic thing. It's the exact same thing as C major, but it includes an F sharp. Now I will show you the left-hand part of the G major scale. So let's start on G. Then we use all 5 fingers this time. But after the 5th, the thumb finger have to turn around. Because since I'm out of fingers, I'll have to turn my middle finger over to E. So remember the F sharp. One more time. Turn, F sharp, G. You come back down. Now after G, F sharp, E, you have to turn since I cannot use my last 2 fingers because then I run out of fingers. So after G, F sharp, E, let me turn and use my thumb to get to the next note, D. Then now I have 4 fingers for 4 notes. So once again, turn, F sharp, G, F sharp, turn. Let's play with both hands now and let's see how it goes. So that's the basic G major scale. You can also play it faster if you're getting better at this. And you can play it as many times as you want. You can get better at this. And remember that it has an F sharp because many people might forget. If you play it with an F sharp, it sounds very odd. So this is weird F note, which doesn't fit in. So you want to sharpen it. And remember, that's always the F sharp in G major. So that's your G major scale. So these 2 scales you'll have to remember. And what are the 2 scales again? C major and G major. So C major and G major. Two scales, and the 2 techniques that we talked about, legato and staccato, if you remember. Legato means connected, staccato means broken apart. If we take the G major scale and we play legato, we would get connected. If staccato, we would get. So it's light and it's just disconnected. It's very broken. It's not connected.